All right, so whenever we hear something for the first time, we might not understand it, nor will we be able to process the information. So sometimes it takes time to allow the processing of the information, just like when you're eating food and you're taking big chunks, big bites, you get a lot of air and a lot of bread and whatever, and you start hiccuping. Your body's like, hello, slow down, breathe a little bit. We all need to breathe. Okay. Yes, these are stressful times because there's a lot of legislation happening, and the legislation affects the people. So, in order to protect yourself and your property, one would need to set things in order. So, when you have a group of people that maybe have already done these things and they try to teach you or give you hints or information, they might not be giving you everything. They might not even know how to teach. And that's very common. A lot of people get possessive with their information that they study because of the fact that it's been painstakingly difficult and it's been years. So just like if you remember that story about the chicken, I think it was a chicken, the hen who was wanting to get everybody to make cornbread. Hey, do you guys all want to make some cornbread? And nobody wanted to help. She had to grow the corn and take care of the corn and then shuck the corn and then grind it up. And it was a lot of work. But when it came time for the cornbread to be done, of course, everybody wanted to eat it. So there are a lot of people who do a lot of work and they process the information a lot easier. Some people might even have, because of trauma in their life or injury, they might have processing orders or disorders in their brain that they just can't process the information. Or sometimes when you give the information or teach the information, it might be too overwhelming and people just can't. It does remind me of a little baby that doesn't have any teeth and depends upon the mommy for the breast milk. You can't give that kid a steak. No matter how much you chop it up with, a knife, the steak, not the baby, the steak, and you try to force feed a baby, they can choke. They can die. They can get sick, throw up. It's too much. So when there's a high influx of information, and when things are moving rapidly in our landscape, in our society is moving very quickly, and they're passing edicts and mandates and orders and all these things, we have to set ourselves up to be protected. Sorry about that. I forgot to turn that off. So we're going to go over a form that was brought up in my group. It's called Power of Attorney. Now, most of us know that lawyers are attorneys. And in the legal system, which it's quite involved, and I don't expect anybody to understand a whole system that's set up that we didn't go to school to learn. I don't set up anybody to automatically know how to do things. So when we are learning something or we get a form or someone says, you have to do this, this is important, this is a big step, you also want to know, well, if I do sign this, what does that mean? Does that mean that I'm taking on some capacity that maybe I don't have the capacity to understand? Are there consequences for me to fill this out? Are there consequences for me to send it or file it? So sometimes it will take a while before you actually decide to go through with it. And that's how it's been for me. So I'm going to share the screen. And I'm going to somehow look for it. Let's see what we got. Get rid of that. Let's take a look. Let's read the directions first, okay? And then you can consider, is this for you or is this not for you? So this is an IRS form. It says about form 2848. And it's the power of attorney and declaration of representative. So right here it says to use their form, the IRS form 2848, to authorize an individual to represent you before the IRS. That's what this is for. The individual you authorize must be a person eligible to practice before the IRS. So when I'm reading this, to me, it looks to me like this should be an accountant or a lawyer. I wouldn't ever think it would just be the average person or the living woman or the living man. But in some of the groups that look at these type of legalese forms, some are saying that we as a living person or woman or man are to be filling out something like this to make a delineation that there is an entity with the same name that we have that's all capitalized, and us, the living woman or man, that our name is spelled in the proper form. So it's a very interesting thing when you look at the styles, the different, I think it's Chicago styles. It shows you how properly how we're supposed to be spelling our name, and it's with one capital letter and lowercase. And then the last name is the first capital letter and lowercase. But if you look at your driver's license, your social security card, your checking account, your credit cards, the bills that you get, you're going to notice that your name is all in capital letters. And that's not because they're saying, oh, we want to make sure that you can read it properly. Because some people can't read it when it's spelled properly. No, that's not the reason. It's called capitis maximus diminutio, which it's all capital, the largest letters with diminished status. And it's legal fiction. It's an entity. It's a doing business name as in order for you to do commerce. So what the people who are filling out this form are saying is that this is a notice to the IRS that we, the living people, are not the actual entity. So it's delineating between the two. This is one way of giving notice. There are other pieces of paper or just written out that you can do to say, I'm giving power of attorney to this proper spelled name over this all caps name, and you can get that notarized and you can file that in your county to let them know that way as well. But apparently, some who have researched a little further than myself are saying that the courts that we've known as, we've thought that they were judicial courts, they're actually administrative courts, and they're a bank. They deal with money. You pay them a lot of money. It's also considered their religion. Like they're selling and trading souls of men, like Moloch. You're sacrificing children. It's disgusting. It's gross. They wear their black robes, and it's in a way sort of like a church or temple. Their courts, the way the courtroom is, it's kind of like a church, kind of like a boat or a ship, a pirate ship. They're stealing from you. So people are trying to protect themselves by doing this type of thing. This is through the IRS, and they're saying that the courts deal with the IRS. You can do more study and more research about that. We all need to continue to learn and grow. And I love what I have learned about in the Hebrew mindset, Hebrew being a language with pictures and letters that have more meaning than our English language. They say that whenever you've learned like the beginning of the alphabet, if you only know A and B, you can still teach others who don't know A and B. If you're all the way down to the last letter and you know the whole alphabet or alphabet, you can teach that. So we teach what we know. And you know that we all are teachers in some form of way, whether it's a teacher of your bad attitude or teaching bad things or doing bad things. You know that people are going to catch it. They're going to do it. That's what it does say in the Bible. Do not make friends with an angry man, lest you learn his ways and do like him. So if you don't think that you're not teaching, you're deceiving yourself, because everything that we do, people are always watching us, no matter who we are. They're always watching us. And yes, it is always imperative that each one of us get quiet enough to analyze ourselves. And if our enemy or somebody, a friend or anybody's ever bringing up something about us, we can check that and we can look at that and we can apologize or repent and move on and grow. But just because you're bringing up something doesn't mean that it's going to go away, right? You will see the fruit of the tree as they continue. And each one of us has something to overcome. Each one of us has some pruning to do. So we're going to look here and read a little bit more of this, and we'll see if we need to fill something like this out. Right here, I'm going to go over this again. Use Form 2848 to authorize an individual to represent you before the IRS. And what I mentioned before is that there is that shadow. Here's you and here's your shadow. What our country has done is make a shadow person and trying to attach that to us by sewing it on us like Peter Pan and Wendy. She was wanting to attach that shadow right onto him. But we know from science experiments that when you're over here, here's a light, and here you are, and the light's shining that way, your shadow's going to be over here. It's not going to be attached to you. It's going to be over here. So that shadow person, you can take a look at this right here. What you're trying to say with this is that you're not their shadow made up person that they're trying to attach to you. Okay. So when you read this form, you have to consider this, because you're thinking, oh, let's see, this is talking about someone else, like a CPA, certified public accountant, or someone else like a lawyer. But what the people in the group that we were discussing this about a month ago, they were saying that they use this to give notice to the IRS, which is attached to the courts, that we are not their construct. Okay, so I'll read this again. Use form, this one, 2848, to authorize an individual to represent you. So when you're present right here, you're already here. If someone is representing you, that's somebody else, right? It's very confusing and very, what's the word, minutia? It's a little bit more difficult to try to grasp, but all of the commerce for admiralty maritime law is using a commercial entity in order for you to do business with corporations, because apparently a living soul isn't to be doing business with a dead entity. So there's a difference between in the private, you're working with another person or another people, living soul, and you have agreement. That's one way. But when you're in commerce, maritime, admiralty law, it's commercial. So they've given us a commercial name that's all capitalized to operate in the commercial realm. And what I've been discussing in some of the videos, there's another one with a picture of a smashed car on the front, and it's another type of form on there, or a code. It's very interesting. If you can take a look at that, that'll show you right there that they are using you as an employee of the state for the driver's license. You've become their shadow employee. So this particular form right here is what some of the people in my group are saying. This is going to delineate the living woman or man from that business entity, that ens legis, that straw man, or that corporation or that organization that was constructed to do commerce. Do you understand that? It's crazy wild, but it's kind of like that movie, The Matrix. And if you look at the other videos that have the green, I am reading the Redemption Manual. So if you read that, or at least listen to me read it and follow along, you might be able to understand a little bit about what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and read this little paragraph, and let's see where this takes us. So use form 2848 to authorize an individual to represent you before the IRS. So they're saying to use the living woman, this is where it's difficult for me. The living woman to represent the straw man or the corporate entity or the organization or the all caps. And this is where that thing called plausible deniability comes in. If you were to go into court and try to teach this or talk about this in the public, they're going to say, nope, you're crazy. Let's do a psych evaluation on you, because they don't want people to know about that. But you can look at some of the codes and the statutes, and they do talk about commerce and who is eligible and who is the employee and who's doing their job. It's hidden in there. It's called subversion, where they hide it like a submarine. They're hiding it underneath the layer. And they obfuscate, they blur the meaning of it so that you go, oh, maybe I'm crazy. I'm not thinking. Is that true or not? They try to make you so that you're confused. And that's not cool. That's not good. So let me get to that second sentence here. The individual you authorize must be a person eligible to practice before the IRS. So this right here lets me know that I need to look to see what are the requirements to practice before the IRS. Who is eligible to practice before the IRS? Because it doesn't make any sense to me to fill out this, send it with a self-addressed stamped envelope, make copies, and all that, if we're not even eligible as a living woman or man to practice before the IRS. Like, do you need to have a license to practice before the IRS or what? So this is where I get stuck, me personally, in wanting to fill this form out. Just these first two, I get stuck right there. You know, you got to look up, what is individual? Represent you before the IRS, and then person, because that's not a living woman, that's another construct. So we would be operating as an executrix or executor. We'd be putting a hat on to say, okay, I am not the living woman at this moment. I am going to be the executrix of this estate to be able to do this. So here's the form that you can Google on irs.gov, look up 2848, do some studying to see about all of this. Here's the related items about Form 56, which is the notice concerning fiduciary relationship to assign someone, and all these others here. So you can go on this website, irs.gov, and look at it. Let's read more here. It says, you may authorize a student who works in a qualified low-income taxpayer clinic or student tax clinic program to represent you under a special appearance authorization issued by the Taxpayer Advocate Service. So if you're not any of these two right here, a student who is a qualified low-income taxpayer clinic or a student tax clinic program to represent you under a special appearance authorization issued by the Taxpayer Advocate Service, then I don't see how we could do the power of attorney over that ens legis thing. Like I said, there is a lot of duality. There is a little doublespeak, and sometimes some people can be misguided as well. So this is why we want to look at it before we do something. Here's another. Your authorization of a qualifying representative will also allow that individual to receive and inspect your confidential tax information. So when I'm reading this, this is showing me that if you fill out this power of attorney for yourself, you're going to have to know how to do all of the confidential tax information type of stuff. So let's move on. You can file Form 2848, Power of Attorney and Declaration of Representative, if the IRS begins a foreign bank and financial accounts FBAR examination as a result of an income tax examination. Please see representation for FBAR issues section of Report of Foreign Bank and Financial Accounts for more information. Well, let's go there. Let's see, what is this all about? It says every year under the law known as the Bank Secrecy Act. Whoa. You must report certain foreign financial accounts, such as bank accounts, brokerage accounts, and mutual funds to the Treasury Department and keep certain records of those accounts. You report the accounts by filing a report of foreign bank and financial accounts FBAR on FinCEN Form 114. So it's getting a little deep here because you're going to have to do a lot of this type of financial accounting. So who must file? Oh, check this out. A United States person, oh, including a citizen. Oh, resident. Whoa, corporation, partnership, limited liability company, trust, and estate must file an FBAR to report. A financial interest in or signature or other authority over at least one financial account located outside the United States. If the aggregate value of those foreign financial accounts exceed 10,000 at any time during the calendar year reported. Generally, an account at a financial institution located outside the United States is a foreign financial account. Whether the account produced taxable income has no effect on whether the account is a foreign financial account for FBAR purposes. But you don't need to report foreign financial accounts that are correspondent, nostro accounts. I don't know what that means. Owned by a governmental entity, owned by an international financial institution maintained on a United States military banking facility, held in an individual retirement account, IRA, you own or are beneficiary of, held in a retirement plan of which you're a participant or beneficiary, or part of a trust. Part of a trust of which you're a beneficiary. If you happen to have a trust and it's a different kind of trust that you are not the beneficiary, I'm wondering about that. If a U.S. person, trustee of the trust, or agent of the trust files an FBAR reporting these accounts, you don't need to file an FBAR for the calendar year if all your foreign financial accounts are reported on a consolidated FBAR. All your foreign financial accounts are jointly owned with your spouse, and you completed a signed FinCEN form 114A, authorizing your spouse to file on your behalf, and your spouse reports the jointly owned accounts on a timely filed signed FBAR. Note, income tax filing status, such as married filing jointly and married filing separately, has no effect on your qualification for this exception. The FBAR reference guide and FBAR instructions provide more detailed information. The FBAR webinar explains how to calculate the aggregate value of your accounts to figure if you need to file an FBAR. Now, I'm already overwhelmed just reading this. So if you decide to fill this out, these are the things that you're going to have to do. Get the FinCEN and the FBAR. Do you have the capacity to know what to do? Or are you going to cave? There are some people who they don't even deal with the IRS at all, and they're non-filers. They are considered non-filers. But if you fill this out, it appears to me that you are going to be a filer. So that's something to consider. Which side are you going to be on? The non-filer or the filer? Some things to think about before you step out and do something like that, right?